Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I'm so glad you could join us for this deep dive into something really important for success. Well, in any field, but especially if you're a student. Time management. And to help us make sense of it all, we have Sarah, an expert in making every minute count.
Hi, everyone. It's always so exciting to see how we can make the most of our time.
I don't know about you, but my school years always felt like I was racing against the clock. You know, classes, homework, trying to have some kind of social life.
Right.
It felt like there was never enough time to get everything done.
Yeah.
I bet some of you listening feel the same way.
I think a lot of students can relate to that.
So why is time management so important for students?
Well, good time management. It's kind of like a superpower that can help you reach your goals faster. And it's not just about cramming more into your schedule. It's about making choices about what to focus on and when.
So it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. When you manage your time well, you actually free up more time for the things you enjoy, hobbies, friends, even just taking a break. It's about creating a more balanced and less stressful experience as a student.
Yeah, I think we all want that.
Right.
Less stress.
Yeah.
So what are some of the best ways students can take control of their schedules and find time for everything?
Okay. Well, one of the most basic but important strategies is planning and scheduling. You know, it might sound simple, but it can really make a difference.
Okay.
Imagine this. You have a color-coded schedule that shows all your commitments, classes, study time, even when you're going to the gym or hanging out with friends.
Okay.
And then you use your agenda to keep track of daily tasks and deadlines. It's like having a roadmap for your time.
I like that. A roadmap for your time.
Yeah.
So it's like taking the guesswork out of your day.
Exactly. And within that roadmap, you can use something called time blocking.
Time block?
Yeah. It's where you basically divide your day into blocks of time and you assign specific tasks to each block. So for example, Monday morning from 9 to 11, you're researching for that history paper. Tuesday afternoon is for working on those presentation slides.
So it's like planning your day in advance to help you stay focused.
Exactly.
Have you ever tried time blocking?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Did it work for you?
It really helped me, especially during exam season when I felt overwhelmed. Time blocking made those long study sessions seem less scary because I broke them down into smaller chunks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got our schedule, we're time blocking. What's next?
Well, let's be honest. One of the biggest challenges these days is all the digital distractions, social media notifications that urge to just check your phone one more time.
Oh yeah, I think we've all been there. Tell me about it.
It's a constant battle for our attention.
So how can students fight those digital distractions? What are some practical things they can do?
One important thing is to create a dedicated study space. Find a spot that tells your brain, okay, it's time to focus.
So like a quiet corner of the library, a desk in your room, even a cozy spot in a coffee shop.
Exactly. The key is to make it distraction-free. So no phone, no TV, no unnecessary tabs open on your laptop.
It's like building a fortress against distractions.
You got it.
But what about those times when you can't physically escape the noise? Like in a noisy dorm or on a crowded bus?
So in those situations, noise-canceling headphones can be a lifesaver. They create a bubble of focus, even in the most chaotic environments. Some people also find that listening to calming music or white noise can help drown out those distractions.
I love white noise. It's like a blanket for my brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've carved out a study space. We're armed with noise-canceling headphones. What else can students do to minimize distractions?
Sometimes the best thing to do is a digital detox, especially during those dedicated study blocks.
Digital detox.
Yeah. Turn off your phone completely or use one of those website blocking apps to temporarily block those time-wasting websites and apps. It might seem extreme, but it can be really freeing.
It's like hitting the pause button on the digital world so you can get some actual work done.
Exactly. But of course, we can't live in a digital-free bubble all the time. So what about those times when you need to be connected, but you still want to stay focused?
Right. That's a good point. Are there any strategies for that?
Definitely. One thing is to be mindful of your notifications. Do you really need to see every email or social media update as it comes in? Probably not. Consider turning off those non-essential notifications during study time. And if you're working on your computer, try closing any unnecessary tabs or windows that might tempt you to stray from your work.
This is about being more intentional with technology instead of letting it control our attention.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've created a haven for focus. We're battling those distractions. what's next on our time management adventure?
Well, another challenge many students face is those big looming assignments, research papers, final exams. They can feel so overwhelming.
Oh, I remember those. The procrastination monster would always show up whenever I had a big deadline.
Right.
So how can students conquer procrastination and tackle those big tasks without feeling completely overwhelmed?
The key is to break those large assignments down into smaller, more manageable chunks. Instead of staring down a 10-page research paper, focus on writing one paragraph a day. Instead of cramming for an exam the night before, break the material into smaller sections and review them over time.
It's like, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time.
Exactly.
Breaking it down makes it seem less scary and more doable.
That's a great analogy. And each of those smaller bites can have its own mini deadline. This creates a sense of urgency and helps you stay on track.
It's like building a staircase to success one step at a time.
I like that.
Speaking of tackling big challenges, have you ever heard of the eat that frog technique?
I have. It's a great way to overcome procrastination.
Yeah.
The idea is to tackle your most challenging or dreaded task first thing in the morning.
It's like ripping off the Band-Aid.
Wow.
Get that big, scary task out of the way. Then you can approach the rest of the day feeling accomplished and less stressed.
Exactly. And once you've eaten that frog, everything else seems easier in comparison.
Okay, so we're getting things done, we're managing our time, but we're also working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. Working smarter, not harder is all about maximizing your efficiency and effectiveness.
Okay, I like the sound of that. So how can students embrace that work smarter philosophy?
One of the key things is to focus on one task at a time. We live in a world that glorifies multitasking, but research actually shows that it can make us less efficient and lower the quality of our work. It's like trying to run in two directions at once. You'll end up getting nowhere fast.
I've definitely fallen into that multitasking trap before, and it always makes me feel scattered and exhausted. It's so much better just focus on one thing at a time and then move on to the next task once it's done.
Absolutely.
So how can students train their brains to resist multitasking?
It takes practice, but you can try setting a timer for like 25 minutes and commit to focusing on just one task during that time. Even short bursts of focused work can be really productive. And then when the timer goes off, you can take a short break to recharge before moving on to the next task.
So it's like giving your brain permission to really dive into one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I can see how that would lead to better results and less mental fatigue. What are some other ways students can work smarter, not harder?
Another helpful tip is to use time tracking apps.
Time tracking apps.
Yeah. They can really open your eyes to how you're spending your time. They're like a mirror that shows you those hidden time sinks that you might not even be aware of. Once you know where your time is going, you can make better decisions about how to use it more effectively.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think we all have those sneaky time wasters that we don't even realize are eating up our day.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite time tracking apps that you recommend?
There are lots of good ones, both free and paid. Rescue Time Toggle and Clockify are popular. They can track your computer usage, your phone usage, even how much time you spend on specific tasks.
Cool. I'll have to check those out. Okay, so we've planned our time, battled distractions, learned to work smarter. What else is important for students who want to master this whole time management thing?
One thing that's often overlooked is the power of downtime. Breaks and holidays. It's easy to just think of them as time to relax and forget about school, but you can actually use that time to catch up on studies or get ahead on assignments.
That's such a good point. It's like using the off-season to prepare for the next game.
Exactly. Even spending a little bit of your break to review material or start on upcoming assignments can make a big difference when you go back to your regular schedule. It's all about setting yourself up for success.
I wish I'd known that back when I was a student.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about planning distractions, working smarter, and utilizing downtime. What else is important?
Building good habits is really important. It's like laying a strong foundation for success. When you establish consistent routines for studying, sleeping, and even leisure time, you create structure in your life, and that naturally improves your time management in the long run.
Routines are so powerful. It's like putting your productivity on autopilot.
Exactly. When you have established routines, you don't have to waste energy deciding what to do next or when to do it. It frees up your mind to focus on the task at hand.
So it's like your brain is saying, okay, it's study time, or it's time to relax, and your body just follows along.
Exactly.
What are some good routines that students can try to incorporate into their lives?
It can be simple things like having a consistent wake-up time and bedtime, creating a dedicated study schedule, or setting specific times for meals and exercise. The key is to find what works for you and stick with it.
It's about finding a rhythm that works for you, a rhythm that supports both your productivity and your well-being.
Right. And another important part of those routines is good sleep hygiene.
Sleep is often the first thing to go when we're stressed.
Yeah.
But it's really the foundation for a productive day.
Exactly. When we don't get enough sleep, it's like trying to function with a foggy brain. It's so much harder to focus, learn, and remember things. So consistency is key. Stick to a regular sleep schedule even on weekends, and create a relaxing bedtime routine to help your brain wind down.
That makes sense. I know that caffeine and alcohol before bed can really mess with my sleep. And having a calm sleep environment, dark, quiet, and cool, can make a huge difference. Are there any other sleep tips you'd like to share?
Well, stress and anxiety can definitely interfere with sleep. So finding healthy ways to manage stress, like exercise, meditation, or spending time in nature, is really important for good sleep hygiene.
So it's about taking care of both your mind and body.
Yeah, it's all connected.
When you take care of yourself, you're naturally more equipped to manage your time and reach your goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about routines and sleep. What else should students know about time management?
Another important skill is learning to say no.
Say no. Isn't that a little rude?
Not at all. It's about realizing that you can't do everything, and it's okay to set boundaries. It's about knowing how much you can handle and making sure you're not overcommitting yourself to the point of burnout.
I think a lot of students struggle with that. You know, they feel like they have to say yes to everything or they'll disappoint people. But sometimes saying no is the best thing you can do for yourself.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's about setting healthy boundaries and understanding that your time and energy are valuable.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And sometimes saying no to one thing allows you to say yes to something else that's even more important to you. It's about making choices that are aligned with your values and priorities.
Okay, I see your point. And on that note, it's also really important to be flexible when it comes to time management.
Oh, absolutely.
Life is unpredictable.
It is.
Things happen, plans change,
Right.
and sometimes you just have to go with the flow.
Right.
So how can students build that flexibility into their time management plans?
Well, one way is to build some buffer time into your schedule.
Buffer time.
Yeah, don't fill every minute of your day with tasks and appointments. Leave some wiggle room for unexpected things or just for those moments when you need to take a break. And don't be afraid to adjust your plans as needed.
It's about embracing the unexpected and knowing that things won't always go according to plan.
Exactly.
And most importantly, remember to make time for things that you enjoy.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in being productive and achieving goals that we forget to take care of ourselves.
Right.
What are some ways students can make sure they're not neglecting their well-being while trying to manage their time?
It's about making time for those things that nourish your soul, whether it's spending time with loved ones, pursuing hobbies, getting out in nature, or just taking some time for yourself to relax and recharge. Those things aren't luxuries, they're necessities.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that feels balanced and fulfilling, not just productive.
Exactly. And when you feel good, you're naturally more motivated and productive. It's a win-win.
I like that.
Yeah.
A win-win.
Right.
Well, Sarah, this has been great. You shared so many helpful tips. I'm sure our listeners are ready to put them into action.
I hope so.
But before we move on to the next part of this deep dive, I want to hear from you, our amazing listeners. What are your biggest time management challenges? What strategies have worked for you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab for more deep dives into topics that matter. We'll be back soon with even more practical tips and strategies to help you become a time management master.
Okay, great. You know, one of the things I hear a lot from students is that they just feel overwhelmed, like there's just too much to do and not enough time.
Yeah, that's the classic time management dilemma. Too much to do, too little time.
It is. And that's where prioritization comes in. It's not about like magically making more time. It's about figuring out what's really important and then focusing your energy on those things.
So it's about being more strategic with your time, like a detective. You know, analyzing your schedule, figuring out where your time is going, and then choosing how you want to spend it more effectively.
That's a great way to put it. And there's a tool that can be really helpful for that kind of detective work. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's a way to decide what tasks are most important by looking at how urgent they are and how important they are. I like to think of it as a way to visualize your to-do list. So you can see which tasks need to be done right away, which ones you can schedule for later, and which ones you can maybe delegate or even get rid of altogether.
I love that. Visualizing your to-do list, it really helps you see what deserves your time and energy.
So let's say a student is feeling super stressed because they have exams and assignments and extracurricular activities all happening at the same time. How could they use this Eisenhower matrix to prioritize everything and get a handle on their workload?
Okay, well, first they would write down every single task and commitment they have. Then, using the matrix, they'd categorize each task based on whether it's urgent and important, or urgent but not important, or important but not urgent, or maybe not even urgent or important at all.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What are some examples of those different types of tasks?
Sure. An urgent and important task would be like a paper that's due tomorrow, or studying for an exam next week. You know, those are things you need to do right away.
Yeah, those are the drop everything and do this now kind of tasks. What about urgent but not important?
Those might be things like answering emails that aren't super important, or going to meetings that could have just been an email. You know, they seem urgent, but they might not really help you reach your goals.
So it's about figuring out which urgent tasks are actually important and which ones you can push back on.
Exactly. And then you have the tasks that are important but not urgent. So maybe working on a long-term project, planning for the future, or learning a new skill.
Those are the ones that are easy to put off because they don't have an immediate deadline. But they're the things that can make a big difference in your life in the long run.
You got it.
Oh, wow.
And then finally, you have those tasks that are neither urgent nor important. Things like scrolling through social media, watching mindless TV, or getting caught up in drama. Those are the real-time wasters.
Yeah, those are the ones we got to cut out.
Exactly. So by using the Eisenhower matrix, students can start to see their workload more clearly and make better choices about what to focus on and what to let go of.
I like how this tool can help you take control of your schedule and make choices that support your goals and priorities. It's like having a personal time management coach.
It is.
So we've talked about prioritizing and using the Eisenhower matrix. What else can help students manage that feeling of being overwhelmed and make the most of their time?
Well, sometimes the best thing you can do is just say no.
Wait, say no. Isn't that a bit rude?
Not really. It's about realizing that you can't do everything, and it's okay to set boundaries for yourself. It's about knowing your limits and not taking on so much that you burn yourself out.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for a lot of students. They want to do everything and please everyone, but sometimes saying no to one thing means you can say yes to something else that's even more important to you.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just about saying no to other people. It's also about saying no to those pressures you put on yourself. You know, that pressure to be perfect or to do everything at once.
Yeah, that's so important to remember. It's about progress, not perfection.
I love that, progress, not perfection.
It takes the pressure off and helps you enjoy the process.
Exactly. So learning to say no is really important for managing your time and avoiding burnout. It's about taking care of yourself and making sure you're not spreading yourself too thin.
So it's about stepping back, looking at what you're committed to, and making sure it lines up with what you value and what you want to achieve. It's about being intentional with your time and energy instead of just reacting to everything that comes your way.
Exactly. And along with saying no, it's also important to embrace balance.
Balance. Yeah. That elusive thing we all want.
I know, right?
But really finding that balance between being productive and taking care of yourself, it can be really hard, especially for students who have so much going on. What are your thoughts on finding that balance?
Well, for me, it's about recognizing that we're not robots. You know, we need time to recharge, to connect with people, to do things that bring us joy and make us feel inspired. It's about creating a life that feels good and not just busy.
So it's about finding a rhythm that works for you, a rhythm that includes work and play effort and rest.
Yeah.
It's about listening to your own needs and limits.
You got it. And it's about making choices about how you spend your time. You know, asking yourself, is this really important to me? Does this help me reach my goals? Or is it just draining my energy?
It's like being a curator of your own time, choosing what you want to fill your days with.
I like that. It's about being mindful and making choices instead of just letting things happen.
So we've covered prioritizing, saying no, and finding balance. What other time management secrets are you willing to share?
Let's talk about downtime. I know it seems like the opposite of time management.
Yeah, how can taking a break help you manage your time better?
Well, think of it like this. When you're always go, go, go and pushing yourself to the limit, your brain gets tired. It's like a muscle that gets overworked. It needs time to rest and recover.
It's like running a marathon without stopping for water. You're going to hit a wall eventually.
Exactly. Downtime gives your brain a chance to rest, so you can come back to your work feeling refreshed and energized.
So it's not just about working harder, it's about working smarter by taking breaks.
Exactly. And when you take a break, make sure you really disconnect. Get away from screens, get some fresh air, move your body, do something that makes you happy and helps you relax.
So it's about giving your mind and body a chance to recharge.
Yeah,
And when you come back to your work, you'll be more focused and productive.
exactly.
So downtime isn't a luxury. It's essential for anyone who wants to do their best work and have a good balance in their life.
It is. It's an investment in yourself.
I love how you've changed the way we think about downtime. It's not about being lazy. It's about being strategic and setting yourself up for success.
Right.
So we've talked about prioritizing, saying no, finding a balance, and the importance of downtime. What else can we learn about time management?
Let's talk about those little bits of time that we often waste, those 10 minutes between classes, that half-hour commute those times when you're waiting for a friend.
Yeah, those little pockets of time can really add up. But it's easy to just zone out or scroll on your phone. What are some more productive things you can do with that time?
Well, you can use that time for those quick tasks that you keep putting off, like answering emails, making a to-do list, reviewing notes, or even just doing a quick meditation or some stretching.
So it's about paying attention to those small moments and using them intentionally instead of letting them disappear.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by how much you can get done when you start seeing those little bits of time as opportunities instead of just wasted time.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your perspective and becoming more aware of how you're spending your time, even those tiny moments.
Exactly. And be prepared to use those moments. Keep a book with you for when you have to wait, have a to-do list on your phone that you can easily check off, or download a meditation app so you can do a quick mindfulness exercise whenever you have a few minutes free.
So it's like having a time management toolkit that you can use whenever you have a little bit of time.
Exactly. And if you plan ahead and think about how you want to use those little pockets of time, they can become productive and even enjoyable parts of your day.
Okay, Sarah, this has been amazing. You've given us so much great advice. I'm sure our listeners are feeling inspired to take control of their time and create a better, more balanced life.
I hope so.
But before we finish up this part of our deep dive, I want to hear from you, our awesome listeners. What are your favorite ways to manage those small pockets of time? Share your tips in the comments. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab for more deep dives into topics that matter. We'll be back soon with the last part of this episode, where we'll talk about some common time management mistakes to avoid and give you even more resources to help you become a time management master. Welcome back to the Learn English Lab. We're wrapping up our deep dive into time management, and I'm really curious about those sneaky little things that can trip us up, even when we think we have a good plan. What are some of the most common pitfalls that students should watch out for?
Well, we've talked a lot about planning and setting priorities, but one of the biggest obstacles to good time management is procrastination. It's that voice in your head saying, you can always do it later, but later often turns into a mad rush the night before something is due.
Oh yeah, that voice. I know it well.
Yeah.
It's a master of making excuses and convincing you that tomorrow is the perfect day to start that big project.
Exactly. And then tomorrow becomes next week, and suddenly that task is hanging over you like a big, scary cloud.
So how can students escape the procrastination trap? What can help them actually start working on something instead of feeling intimidated by it?
One really helpful strategy is to break those large, overwhelming tasks down into smaller, more manageable pieces. So instead of thinking about a 10-page research paper, try focusing on writing just one paragraph each day. It's much easier to get started on something small and specific than something big and daunting.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And once you take that first step, you build momentum and procrastination starts to lose its power over you.
I like that. Once you start moving, it's easier to keep going.
And maybe you could even set up little rewards for yourself when you finish those smaller tasks. A little treat or a break to do something fun. It can really help to keep you motivated.
That's a great idea. Rewards can definitely help you stick to good habits. And speaking of things to watch out for, another common pitfall is overcommitment. It's easy to get excited about new opportunities or to feel like you have to say yes to every request. But if you try to do too much, you'll end up burning yourself out. And that can actually make you less productive in the long run.
I think a lot of students, especially those who are really motivated and want to get the most out of their experience, they struggle with finding that balance between being involved in things and taking on too much.
That's so true. It's really important to be honest with yourself about how much you can handle. Saying no doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're strong and self-aware. You're choosing to prioritize your well-being and make sure you're not sacrificing your health just to please other people or live up to some impossible standard.
It's about setting boundaries,
Yeah.
deciding where you want to invest your time and energy. And sometimes that means saying no to things, even if they seem like good opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's also a good idea to check in with yourself every now and then and see if your commitments still align with your goals and interests. As you learn and grow, you might find that some things aren't as important to you anymore. And that's okay.
Absolutely. It's about being in control of your time and your choices instead of letting things just happen to you.
So we've covered procrastination, overcommitment. Are there any other time management traps that students should be aware of?
One that often gets overlooked is perfectionism. That little voice inside that says, it's not good enough yet, or you need to keep working on this until it's perfect.
Oh yeah, perfectionism. I think we all struggle with that a little bit. There's so much pressure these days to be the best at everything. It can be hard to just put something out there and be okay with it not being perfect.
And the truth is, perfection doesn't really exist. It's always changing. So instead of trying to be perfect, just focus on making progress. Embrace the learning process, even if you make mistakes along the way.
I love that progress over perfection. It's so much more freeing. And when you celebrate the small wins instead of always chasing after some ideal that you might never reach, it's way more motivating.
It is. It's about focusing on the things you can control and letting go of the need to be perfect.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into time management, what's your final piece of advice for our listeners?
Time management. It's a journey, not a destination. There's no magic formula. It's about figuring out what works for you, experimenting with different strategies, and being willing to adjust things as you go along. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your wins, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
That's such great advice. It's
Yep.
about finding that balance between structure and flexibility, between planning and going with the flow, and most importantly, between trying your best and being kind to yourself. It's about creating a life that feels right for you. Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into time management. We hope you found this helpful and are feeling ready to take charge of your time and create a life that's both productive and fulfilling. Big thanks to Sarah for sharing her expertise with us. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab for more deep dives into topics that matter. Remember, you have the power to manage your time well and create the life you want. So go out there and make the most of every moment.
All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something that can feel pretty tricky, honestly, especially if English isn't your native language. We're talking about networking, you know, at those professional events, those conferences, all that.
Oh yeah, I mean, for anyone, it can be kind of nerve-wracking. But yeah, if you're thinking, okay, I got to go to this corporate summit, or there's that industry conference coming up, or even just like a local startup thing, you know, a pitch session or a meetup. I mean, how you connect with people there, it really matters. And for you listening, well, we want to make that whole thing way easier.
Exactly. Like, we want you to feel like you can walk into those things and actually, you know, start conversations that go somewhere, build actual relationships that last, not just like survive the event, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, even for people who are like advanced English learners.
Yeah.
You know, you've got great language skills, but it's those little things.
Yeah.
Like conversations, they're so spontaneous, right? And then there's all that unspoken professional etiquette stuff. It can make it feel like, whoa, the stakes are high here.
Right. Like, what do I do with my hands? Where do I stand?
Exactly. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be your guide, your personal guide, and we're going to give you really practical strategies, not just to survive, like we said, but to actually do really well in these situations, to walk out of there feeling like, yeah, I got this.
I am the master networker.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So over the next few minutes, we're breaking it all down. How to walk in feeling confident, how to start those conversations that lead somewhere, and how to build those relationships that actually last.
Perfect.
Okay, let's get into it. First things first, and this is even before you pick out what you're going to wear, it's preparation.
Oh yeah, preparation is huge. It's everything.
I mean, it might sound obvious, but how you get ready beforehand, it can make a world of difference.
So true. Showing up and just hoping for the best, that's not going to cut it. You got to be strategic about it.
Yeah.
And step one, right off the bat, research that event.
Yeah, do your homework.
What's it all about? Is it about the newest innovations? Is it about companies making deals with each other? Is it even like for recruiting? Figuring out that main purpose, it shapes how you approach the whole thing, you know? And it helps you decide what your goal should be.
Right, and knowing the purpose, well, that helps you figure out who's probably going to be there, right?
Exactly.
Like, are we talking about the big names in your industry, potential clients you've been wanting to connect with, maybe even hiring managers if you're, looking at new job options? Knowing that ahead of time, it lets you tailor your approach. Like, say a big industry leader is going to be presenting. You might want to
do a little digging into their work, see what their company's been up to, maybe read some of the recent stuff. It's not just about being prepared. It gives you a natural way to start talking to them. Like, imagine you're a software developer going to this tech conference, right? And you find out the CTO of some huge AI company is doing a keynote. Well, spend a little time, read their stuff on LinkedIn, check out their company's press releases, all that. It's not just good prep, it's like your ticket into a cool conversation with them. You can be like, hey, I read your article on blah, 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 and they'll see you're genuinely interested.
Right, it shows you're not just there for the free snacks.
Exactly. For you, it shows you're serious.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that actually leads us nicely into preparing discussion topics, and we're not talking about like a script you memorize, word for word, but having some relevant things to talk about based on, trends in your field, big changes happening, even some recent company news. It shows the people you meet that you're engaged, you know what's going on, and you're ready to actually talk.
Right. Like, what are the hot topics everyone's talking about in your industry? What are those big debates, those discussions going on? What new technologies are coming out and everyone's buzzing about? Having a few of those in your back pocket, it makes starting those conversations way easier.
It's like having your talking points ready.
Yeah, exactly. And another important thing, go into the event knowing what you want to get out of it. What are your goals? Are you actively looking for a new job? Maybe you want to find companies to partner with, or are you mainly there to learn about the latest trends?
Having those specific goals, it's like your compass, right? It guides you the whole time you're there.
Totally.
Now, a really important part of getting ready, and this is big, is crafting your elevator pitch.
Ah, yes, the elevator pitch.
So for those who might not know, this is basically your short and sweet answer to that classic question, so what do you do?
Yeah.
You're going to hear that a lot.
And it's amazing, you should really pay attention to this, how often that simple question, it throws people off. Your elevator pitch, it's got to be quick, ideally under 30 seconds, but it's got to make an impact, leave a good impression. It's like your professional snapshot,
Yeah.
It says who you are, what you do, and this is key for connecting, what makes you valuable, what you bring to the table.
Right. And to make this super clear, let's look at an example. Say Maria, she's a UX designer, right? She meets someone new. She might say, hello, I'm Maria. I'm a UX designer, and I specialize in making really intuitive digital experiences for e-commerce brands. My last project, I helped a startup boost their sales conversions by 30%. I'm here to learn about the latest trends in UX design and to connect with other people in the field. See how much she fit in there.
She nailed it. She really did. For you, the key things to notice there are that she clearly says what she does, her specific area, a real achievement that shows her impact, that 30% boost, and what she's hoping to get from the event. She doesn't just say her job title, she shows the actual results she gets. And, importantly, she ends by saying she wants to connect with people, which, like we said, that's the whole point of networking.
So let's give you some actionable tips to make your own awesome elevator pitch. First, keep it short, like we said, under 30 seconds. Really highlight what makes you stand out, your special skills, your relevant experience, your big wins, all that. And this is important. Don't make it a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
You gotta adapt it a little depending on who you're talking to. Like if you're talking to a potential investor, you might emphasize different things than if you're chatting with a colleague, right?
Yeah, being flexible is key. And of course, practice makes perfect. You want your pitch to sound natural, confident, not like you're reading it off a cue card. Say it out loud, record yourself, practice in front of a mirror, whatever works, until it feels smooth and natural.
Right, not robotic.
Exactly.
And speaking of not sounding like a robot, let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid. Nerves can get to us all. And sometimes that makes us talk super fast, which can make it hard for others to understand, especially if English isn't their first language either. So pace yourself.
Yeah, take a breath. And I think we've all been there where we want to tell them everything we do, all our accomplishments, right? We overload them with info.
Yeah.
But remember, the goal with that initial elevator pitch is to spark their interest, get the conversation going, not to recite your entire resume. Keep it focused and concise. That's how you make a good impression.
Like you want to leave them wanting more.
Exactly.
And finally, watch out for using too much jargon. It's fine to use industry terms when you're talking to people in your field, they'll get it. But if you're talking to people from different backgrounds or people who are still learning English, avoid those super complex words, those niche terms that might confuse them. Clarity is key, always. So you've done your research, your pitch is polished. Now comes the moment of truth. Actually walking into that networking space. And let's be real, even for pros, that can bring on the nerves.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally normal to feel a little nervous. Even people who network all the time, they might feel some anxiety before diving into a crowded room. The trick is having ways to manage that nervousness. Positive self-talk can really help. Remind yourself of what you're good at, your experience, what you bring to the table. Remember, everyone else there, they're there for the same reason, to connect.
Right. And another tip, think about getting to the event a bit early. Might seem counterintuitive, but being one of the first people there, it can actually help you relax, get comfortable. It's calmer before the rush, right? It gives you a chance to get the lay of the land and maybe even strike up a few conversations while it's still chill. It's a good confidence booster before things get crazy.
Right. So true. And don't underestimate body language. It's powerful for first impressions. Walk in, stand tall, keep an open posture, arms uncrossed, shoulders back, make eye contact, smile genuinely. Those nonverbal cues, they say, hey, I'm confident, I'm approachable. It makes people more likely to start a conversation with you. For you, that can make a huge difference in how people see you.
Like imagine you're at this business seminar, right? Instead of hovering by the snacks looking lost, you walk up to a smaller group that's already talking. You smile confidently, open posture, and it shows them you're open to joining in. Makes it way easier for them to welcome you in.
Exactly. Now, the big question is, how do you actually approach a group or someone you want to talk to? If you're going for a group, take a second, observe them. Are they in deep discussion, or is there a pause? Look for a natural opening where you can politely jump in without interrupting. Maybe you overhear something that relates directly to your field or something from the event.
That's your cue. Like, a simple approach could be, excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about digital marketing trends. That's something I'm really interested in. Do you mind if I join in? Boom, you're in the conversation, and you've shown genuine interest in what they're talking about.
Perfect. And if you're approaching an individual, being direct but friendly works best. You could try, hi, I'm your name. I notice you're from company name. I've heard good things about your recent product launch. It shows you've done a little homework, even if it's just from the event materials. And it gives you a specific thing to connect on beyond just, hi, how are you?
Right. And a friendly handshake, a genuine smile, those go a long way. It's all about showing you're open to connecting, to building those relationships. So you've started a conversation, great. Now how do you keep it going? How do you make it actually meaningful? This is where the art of small talk comes in.
Now, small talk sometimes gets a bad rap, but for you, in a networking situation, it's essential. It's like the oil that keeps things running smoothly. It breaks the ice. You build that initial connection before you get into the serious stuff. It's like building a little bridge to those more important topics.
I like that, the bridge analogy.
Yeah.
And there are some go-to topics you can always use for small talk at these events. The event itself is always a safe bet. You can ask, what do you think of the keynote this morning? Or have you been to this conference before? Easy starters. Everyone has an opinion.
And industry trends are another good one. You could ask, how do you think all this AI stuff is going to change content creation in the next few years? Or what are some of the biggest challenges your company's facing with all these changes happening? These questions show you're engaged with the bigger picture, thinking about the industry as a whole.
Right, you're not just thinking about your own little bubble.
Exactly.
And don't forget about personal interests, but keep it professional, of course. Like asking someone what got you into this field in the first place can lead to some really interesting conversations. It can help you find common ground beyond just your current jobs.
Totally. And what's really cool, and you should pay attention to this, is how you smoothly transition from that initial small talk to deeper, more meaningful conversations. The key is to really listen to what the other person is saying and look for those opportunities to dive deeper into stuff you're both interested in. Ask open-ended questions, the kind they can't just answer yes or no to. Questions that make them think and share their experiences.
So instead of asking, are you enjoying the conference? Which they might just say, yeah, it's all right. Try something like, what have been some of the most insightful sessions you've attended? And what made them so valuable for you? That gets them talking.
Right, and if they mention a challenge their industry is facing, a good follow-up for you could be, what do you think are some potential solutions to that? Or what strategies are people using to address that? Or if they talk about a project they're excited about, ask them to tell you more about what makes it so engaging, what they enjoy about it. These kinds of questions show genuine interest and make the conversation go deeper.
To make this real for you, imagine you meet a digital marketer at an event. You start with some casual small talk about the event itself, maybe a speaker you both liked. Then you naturally move into talking about trends in social media advertising. From there, you ask how they're seeing brands use storytelling to really engage their audience. Now you're having a real conversation, sharing insights, learning from each other's experiences.
Exactly. The goal is to move past those surface-level chit-chat and really get into shared interests, common challenges, those potential ways you could work together. That's where the good stuff happens, the real connections.
And once you've had that good conversation, it's so important to exchange contact info so you can stay connected.
Absolutely. You've made a good connection. Now you got to keep that momentum going after the event. Business cards are still a thing. They're valuable. Make sure yours are up to date and have them ready to go.
Yeah, keep those cards handy.
And these days, connecting on LinkedIn is pretty much essential. A simple, "It was great talking with you. Can I send you a connection request on LinkedIn?" That's a standard, effective way to stay in touch professionally. If you can, personalize the request, mention something specific you talked about. It helps them remember you and why they should connect.
And after the event's over, the follow-up, that's where you really build the relationship. Don't underestimate a quick, thoughtful email to the people you met. A simple message like, "Hi, name. It was great meeting you, and I really enjoyed our conversation about mention the topic. Let's stay in touch." It can go a long way.
What's really impactful is sending a personalized follow-up. If you remember something they were particularly interested in, or you come across an article or a resource you think they'd like, share it with them. Like, you could send an email saying, "Hi, name. Remember we talked about the latest trends in sustainable tech at the conference. I saw this article and thought of you." It shows you are listening and you're thinking of them even after the event.
And if the conversation was really good, and you both think there's potential to work together, don't be shy about suggesting a follow-up meeting. Maybe a virtual coffee chat or an in-person meeting, depending on where you both are and what you talked about. It's a chance to explore those possibilities. Now, let's be honest. Networking can be awkward sometimes. Things happen, especially when you're doing it in English. So let's talk about some of those tricky situations you might run into.
One that happens to all of us, it's totally normal, is forgetting someone's name after you just met them. It's a human thing. The key is to handle it smoothly. Be polite, direct, and just ask for a reminder. You can say, "I'm so sorry, I've completely blanked. Could you remind me of your name?" Most people are totally understanding.
Or if you're feeling brave, use some humor. A little, "Oh dear, names are my weakness, please remind me," can lighten the mood and make it less awkward for both of you.
Yeah, humor can be a lifesaver. Another important skill is knowing how to gracefully exit a conversation when you're ready to move on. You don't want to be stuck talking to one person the whole time and miss out on other connections. Use a polite transition. Something like, "It's been great talking with you. I want to make sure I connect with a few more people before the event ends." That's a professional way to move on.
Or if you see someone nearby that you think the person you're talking to might also want to meet, offer to introduce them. You could say, "It was really interesting talking about topic. Have you met Sarah yet? She's also working on related area. You two might have things in common." It's a natural way to excuse yourself, and you might even help them make a connection.
Exactly. And for those of you who might feel a little shy about your English in these situations, remember, focus on communicating clearly. Don't worry about using fancy words or complicated sentences. If you can't think of the right word, paraphrase, explain it another way. The important thing is getting your ideas across.
Right. Most people at these events, they get it. They just want to understand you. So focus on making yourself understood and keep your confidence up, even if you're feeling unsure about your English. What really matters is your willingness to engage, to connect, to share your experiences.
Absolutely.
All right, let's quickly go over what we've covered. We talked about how important preparation is, from researching the event and figuring out who's going to be there, to really nailing your elevator pitch.
We talked about how to walk into that networking space feeling confident, using positive self-talk to manage those nerves, and using open, approachable body language to make a good first impression.
We went through mastering small talk, giving you some go-to topics, and then explain how to take those initial conversations to a deeper level, asking open-ended questions and really listening. We also talked about the best ways to exchange contact info and how to follow up afterward, emphasizing the importance of personalizing those messages.
And finally, we tackled some of those awkward situations that can come up, giving you tips for dealing with things like forgetting names, gracefully ending conversations, and offering advice for those who might not feel 100% confident in their English.
The big takeaway here is that networking in English, just like any other skill, it takes preparation, confidence, and practice. By using these strategies, you'll be way better equipped to connect with people, build those strong, lasting professional relationships, and open up new opportunities for yourself.
So here's what you can do right now to put all this into practice. First, practice your elevator pitch. Stand in front of the mirror, say it out loud, maybe record yourself, and get comfortable with it. Second, if you can, go to a virtual networking event. It's a lower pressure way to practice and build your confidence from home. Third, at your next in-person event, challenge yourself to start conversations with at least 3 new people. And finally, after each event, think about how it went. What felt good? What were the challenges? What can you improve for next time?
This brings up a really interesting thought. Think about the amazing connections and opportunities that could come from you just stepping a little outside your comfort zone at your next networking event. You never know who you'll meet, what you'll learn, or what doors might open just by putting yourself out there and making that effort to connect.
It's true. You never know what might happen.
And that's the deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Hello and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm Mike, and I'm so glad you could join us for another deep dive into, well, whatever we find interesting and think could help you on your English journey.
It's great to be here.
And today we're joined by Sarah. Sarah, are you ready to help our listeners unlock fluency?
I think so, Mike. I hope so.
Okay, well, we're diving into 100 daily English conversation topics for fluency. And this is, I really like this resource, actually, because it taps into something I think we all crave, and that is connection through conversation.
Right.
And whether you're prepping for like a job interview, or maybe you're traveling to a new country, or you just want to feel more at ease, like just chatting with friends, these topics I think can be like a fast track to fluency. What do you think, Sarah?
You know what I really like about this resource is how it's structured.
Okay.
It's designed to kind of help you build confidence gradually.
Okay.
The tips section is really good too. It emphasizes practical application, consistency, and active engagement, which are all really important for making real progress. Yeah.
With the language.
I completely agree. And the range of topics is just amazing. It's like they've thought of everything.
Right.
From just everyday conversations about commuting, technology, to more personal things like childhood memories or funny incidents. There's really something here for everyone.
And I think it's particularly clever how they've included topics that encourage you to use a variety of tenses and vocabulary.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, discussing childhood memories, that naturally pushes you to use past tenses
Yeah.
and descriptive language. And because memories often have like strong emotions attached to them, it can really help you remember the new vocabulary more easily.
That's a great point. And speaking of those personal experiences, I think the topic of funny incident, that's pure gold.
Right.
Everyone loves a good laugh, and sharing funny anecdotes is just a fantastic way to connect with people and loosen up in a conversation.
For sure.
Plus, using humor can make learning English feel less like work and more like play. Yeah. It's true. Laughter can break down barriers and make us more receptive to learning.
Yeah.
And these personal experience topics are just, they're designed for those kind of engaging interactions.
But it's not all fun and games, right?
Yeah.
This resource also tackles some serious topics that can really challenge you to use more complex language and express nuanced ideas.
Definitely. Topics like a life-changing event encourage you to delve into your emotional vocabulary, use idioms, and structure more complex sentences, which are all really essential skills for advanced fluency.
Right. You're not just memorizing words and grammar rules, you're expressing yourself authentically, which is a huge part of what fluency is all about.
And then there are topics like job interviews, remote work, and learning new skills, which are just so relevant for personal and professional growth.
It's like they've tapped into the pulse of what people are talking about today.
Exactly.
And by discussing these topics in English, you're not only practicing the language, but also gaining valuable insights and perspectives.
It's a win-win.
It is. You're expanding your vocabulary, improving your grammar, and broadening your horizons all at the same time.
That's right.
And let's not forget the cultural and social topics.
Right. Yeah.
Talking about festivals and celebrations or social issues is a great way to learn about different cultures and practice expressing your opinions in a respectful and thought-provoking way.
It's like opening a window to the world through conversation.
Yeah.
You can learn about different customs, traditions, and perspectives, which can enrich your understanding of both the language and the world around you.
Okay. Now, just when you think it can't get any more interesting, we hit the hypothetical and fun section.
Right.
Things like if you won the lottery, a day without technology, or even superpowers.
These lighter topics are often overlooked in language learning, but they're so valuable because they allow you to be creative with language, explore your imagination, and have fun while practicing.
It's like giving yourself permission to play with the language.
That's right.
And when you're having fun, you're more likely to stay motivated and keep learning.
Exactly. These fun topics can also be really effective for practicing fluency because they take the pressure off of being correct. You can focus on expressing yourself freely and creatively, which is really crucial for developing confidence and natural flow.
And that brings us to a crucial point, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
The tips section of this resource really highlights the importance of actually using these topics in real-life conversations.
Right.
It's not enough to just passively read through them. You need to actively engage. Find a language partner, join a conversation group, or even just chat with yourself in the mirror.
That's such a great point. The more you use the language, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Yeah.
This resource provides the framework, but it's up to you to bring it to life through active practice.
So we have this incredible resource with 100 conversation topics, covering everything from the mundane to the fantastical. But what does it all really mean for our listener? What's the key takeaway here?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that fluency isn't about memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary lists.
Right.
It's about developing the confidence and skills to actually use English in a variety of situations.
Yeah.
And this resource gives you the tools and inspiration to do just that.
It's like a roadmap to fluency, with different routes and destinations depending on your individual goals and interests. And the best part is you get to choose your own adventure.
Right. It's all about making language learning personal, relevant, and enjoyable, and this resource empowers you to do just that.
So we've got the topics, we've got the tips, but let's dive a little deeper into some specific examples. What are some of your favorite topics from this resource, Sarah? The ones that really get you excited to practice?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
There are so many great options here, but if I had to choose just a few, I think travel experiences is always a good one.
Okay.
Everyone loves to share stories about their adventures, right? And it's a great opportunity to practice all that travel-related vocabulary.
Absolutely. And talking about travel experiences can spark some really interesting conversations about different cultures, customs, and perspectives.
For sure. And it can also lead to some funny anecdotes about mishaps and unexpected encounters along the way.
I love those.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of stories that stick with you.
Okay.
What else? What other topic from this list really sparks your interest?
Let's see. A life-changing event is another one that intrigues me. It allows for deeper conversations and challenges you to express complex emotions in English.
That's a powerful one for sure.
Yeah.
It's not just about fluency. It's about connecting with others on a meaningful level and sharing something truly impactful.
Right. And it forces you to push beyond simple sentence structures and really delve into the nuances of the language.
Okay, and how about from the hypothetical and fun category? Which one of those topics really gets your imagination going?
Oh, superpowers, definitely.
Okay.
It's pure fun and allows for so much creativity in language use. Plus, who doesn't secretly dream about having a superpower?
I'm right there with you on that one. It's like a mental escape hatch and a language learning opportunity all rolled into one.
Exactly. And it can lead to some really entertaining and imaginative conversations.
So we've got travel adventures, life-changing events, and superpowers. Just a small taste of the incredible variety this resource has to offer.
We've only just begun.
That's right. We're about to embark on the second part of our deep dive into 100 daily English conversation topics for fluency. But before we do, we want to hear from you. What are your favorite topics from the list so far? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to know what sparks your conversation engines.
Yeah, it has been really interesting so far.
It has.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But I think our listener is already getting a sense of the power this resource holds.
I agree. And one thing that really strikes me is how well organized it is. It's not just like a random jumble of topics.
Right.
It's like a carefully crafted learning journey, moving from the familiar to the more challenging, just like you would progress in a good language course.
That's a great observation. It is designed to kind of build your confidence gradually, starting with those everyday life topics, just to get you warmed up. And then as you become more comfortable, you can move on to the personal experiences and the professional topics, which often require a richer vocabulary and a deeper understanding of grammar.
It's like starting with the shallow end of the pool and gradually wading into deeper water.
Exactly.
Speaking of everyday life, we talked about commuting earlier.
Right.
But what about something like grocery shopping?
Oh, yeah.
That's a topic that I think everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. And it's packed with opportunities to learn new vocabulary. You could talk about different foods, brands, shopping habits, even online versus in-store shopping, which is such a hot topic these days.
It's like a mini course in supermarket vocabulary.
Okay.
And, it could even lead to a discussion about cultural differences in food and shopping habits, which is always fascinating.
It is, yeah. You're right. It's amazing how these seemingly simple topics can open up whole new worlds of conversation.
They do. And speaking of technology, the topic technology use, another one that's just incredibly relevant today.
Right.
Think about all the vocabulary you could learn just by discussing smartphones, apps, social media, the impact of technology on our lives. It's a goldmine.
It is a goldmine, yeah.
And it can lead to some really thought-provoking conversations. Are we too reliant on technology?
Right.
Is it connecting us or isolating us? These are questions that people all over the world are grappling with. And discussing them in English is a great way to practice expressing your opinions and engaging in a meaningful debate.
Right. Yeah, those deeper conversations can be so valuable for language learning because they force you to think critically and use more sophisticated vocabulary.
Yeah.
And really engage with those nuances of the language.
I completely agree. Okay, let's shift gears to personal experiences.
Yeah.
We talked about childhood memories and a funny incident, but what about something a little more profound, like a life-changing event?
That's a great example of a topic that can really stretch your language skills. Think about the vocabulary you need to describe such an event. Words for emotions, feelings, perhaps even some idioms or metaphors to add color and depth to your story.
And it's a topic that can really forge a connection with the person you're speaking with.
Yeah.
Sharing personal stories, even difficult ones, can build empathy and understanding. And that can actually strengthen your communication skills overall. It's not just about fluency, it's about creating genuine human connection.
That's so true. Sometimes the most powerful conversations are the ones where we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and share our authentic selves. And doing that in a foreign language can feel especially challenging, but also incredibly rewarding.
Okay, let's move on to professional and educational topics. These are super relevant for anyone who's learning English for career advancement or personal growth. We mentioned job interviews earlier, but what about a topic like remote work, which is so relevant in today's world?
Oh, remote work. Yeah, that's a fantastic conversation starter because it touches on so many different aspects of our lives. Technology, work-life balance, communication styles, even the future of work itself. It's a topic that's constantly evolving, which means there's always something new to discuss and learn.
And it allows you to practice using more formal language, which is important for professional settings. Think about all the vocabulary related to meetings, deadlines, presentations, collaboration. It's like a mini MBA course in English.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights how language learning can be integrated into so many different aspects of our lives.
Right.
It's not just about studying grammar rules, it's about developing the skills and confidence to communicate effectively in real-world situations.
Now, let's not forget about the educational side of things. A topic like learning new skills is perfect for anyone who's committed to personal growth, which I imagine describes most of our listeners.
Right.
It's a great opportunity to talk about different learning styles, strategies for staying motivated, and the challenges and rewards of expanding your knowledge base.
And it ties in beautifully with our overall theme here, which is the power of conversation to enhance language learning.
Yeah.
By talking about learning new skills, you're actually putting those very skills into practice.
It's like a meta learning experience.
Yeah.
You're learning about learning while you're learning.
Okay.
Sarah, we've covered quite a bit of ground here. Let's take a quick break and then dive into the final categories: cultural and social topics, and hypothetical and fun. We'll be right back after a short pause.
I know, right? It feels like we just started.
It does, but we've already, I think, given our listener a really good sense for just how diverse and engaging these topics are. But before we wrap up, we've got two more categories to explore: cultural and social topics, and hypothetical and fun.
Right. These categories are all about broadening your horizons, both linguistically and culturally.
So let's start with cultural and social topics. I'm particularly intrigued by the topic festivals and celebrations.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a rich and vibrant area to explore, full of interesting vocabulary and cultural insights.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Think about the vocabulary you would use to describe a festival. The food, the music, the costumes, the traditions. It's a feast for the senses.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic way to learn about different cultures around the world.
It's like taking a virtual trip around the globe through conversation.
Exactly.
And it can also lead to some fascinating discussions about the history and significance of these celebrations.
Absolutely. You could talk about the origins of the festival, the symbolism behind the rituals, the way it's evolved over time. It's a great way to really delve into the cultural richness of the English language.
Now let's shift gears to a topic that might spark some lively debate. Social issues.
Okay.
This is an area where you can really practice expressing your opinions in English, using persuasive language, and supporting your arguments with evidence.
Right. It's a chance to really engage with the language on a deeper level, to grapple with complex ideas, and to consider different perspectives. It's not just about fluency, it's about using language as a tool for critical thinking and meaningful dialogue.
And, even if you don't agree with the person you're talking to, practicing respectful disagreement is a valuable skill in any language.
That's such an important point. Being able to articulate your views clearly and respectfully, even when you disagree with someone, is a hallmark of a truly fluent communicator.
Okay, Sarah, I'm ready to have some fun. Let's move on to hypothetical and fun topics. The category where we can let our imaginations run wild.
All right.
Sounds good. Sometimes the most enjoyable conversations are the ones where there are no right or wrong answers, just pure imagination and creativity. So let's start with a classic. If you won the lottery, who hasn't daydreamed about that?
It's the ultimate what-if scenario, and it's a goldmine for language practice. You can talk about your wildest dreams, your plans for the future, even the things you would avoid doing if you suddenly became a multimillionaire.
And it's a great opportunity to practice using conditional tenses like, if I won the lottery, I would.
Exactly.
It's a fun way to experiment with different grammatical structures without even realizing you're learning.
It really is, and it allows for so much creativity and personal expression. No two conversations about winning the lottery will ever be the same.
Okay, let's try another one. A day without technology. This is a thought-provoking topic that challenges us to imagine life without our smartphones, our computers, and all the digital distractions that fill our days.
It's a digital detox in conversation form, and it's a great way to practice describing your daily routines, your hobbies, the things you value most in life.
You might even discover some hidden talents or passions that you never knew you had.
You never know. And even if you don't completely unplug in real life, it's a valuable exercise to consider how much we rely on technology and whether it's truly enhancing our lives or simply consuming our time and attention.
It's a conversation that can spark some real self-reflection, both in English and in life.
It can.
Well, Sarah, we've reached the end of our deep dive into 100 daily English conversation topics for fluency.
Already. Wow.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what this resource has to offer, but I hope our listener is feeling inspired and ready to start practicing.
Oh, I hope so too. We've explored such a wide range of topics, from the mundane to the extraordinary. And I think the key takeaway here is that fluency isn't about perfection. It's about practice, engagement, and having fun with the language.
That's right. So to our amazing listener out there, we encourage you to pick a topic, find a conversation partner, and start talking. The more you use English, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Embrace them, learn from them, and just keep moving forward on your journey to fluency.
Absolutely. And remember, we're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for joining us on this exciting adventure.
It's been fun.
And to all our wonderful listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Learn English Lab. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more language learning tips and inspiration. Until next time, happy learning. All right, so you're here, you're listening in because you want to level up your communication.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to express yourself
Sure.
with more nuance.
Yeah.
And really kind of master the art of language in a way that just makes you a more effective communicator.
Absolutely.
So consider this deep dive a shortcut to that.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at all sorts of advanced vocabulary today and really kind of pulling out the gems, the words that you can actually use in your everyday life, in your professional life,
Right.
to really enhance how you express yourself.
Exactly. And we're not talking about, just throwing in big words to sound smart. It's really about finding those words that help you get your point across.
Right.
More precisely and more
More impactfully, yeah.
impactfully. Yeah, exactly.
So we've gone through a bunch of different sources, and we kind of curated this selection for you. And covers a whole range of areas.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about how to express your opinions more effectively, how to describe people and their personalities.
Yes.
Some really powerful vocabulary for professional and academic settings. How to articulate your emotions and feelings with greater depth, and some advanced vocabulary for winning those debates and discussions.
Oh, absolutely. Being able to hold your own.
Yeah.
In a really engaging and thought-provoking way.
Exactly.
So let's dive right in.
All right, let's start with something I think we can all relate to. Expressing our opinions and ideas.
Okay.
We all have thoughts, and we want to share them, but sometimes the words we use just
don't quite cut it.
They don't have that oomph. Right? So our sources highlighted some really interesting upgrades in this area.
Okay.
So take the word articulate, for instance.
All right.
It's more than just speaking. It's about expressing yourself clearly and fluently. Like someone who can take a complex idea and break it down in a way that anyone can understand.
Exactly. It suggests that there's a real thoughtfulness behind their words.
Yeah.
They're not just rambling. They've carefully constructed their message to be easily understood.
And then there's eloquent.
Yes, eloquent.
Now, this is also about fluent expression, but it adds a layer of grace and persuasiveness.
Right. It's like that speaker who not only informs you, but also moves you.
Yes.
Their words have a certain beauty and rhythm to them that just captivates the audience.
So you can almost think of it as articulate gets the message across. Eloquent gets the message across beautifully and convincingly.
Absolutely. A great distinction.
Yeah. And the examples they gave were things like, she is an articulate speaker who can explain complex topics effortlessly.
Right.
And then his eloquent speech moved the entire audience.
You can really feel the difference there.
Yeah. And it makes you think, have you ever been in a situation where you just couldn't quite find the right words?
Oh, all the time.
And you're just like, if only I had that one perfect word to really nail what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And that's where these nuances come in.
Right, exactly.
They give you that extra level of precision and impact in your communication.
So think about a time when you really wanted to get your point across clearly, or maybe advocate for something you were passionate about. How do you think having those words, articulate or eloquent, at your fingertips, would it change that interaction?
I love that you're prompting the listeners to really connect this to their own experiences.
Yeah, because it's not just about learning new words.
Right.
It's about actually being able to use them.
Exactly. Making them a part of your natural vocabulary.
And on that note of being clear and effective, our sources also talked about concise and lucid.
Yes, these are so valuable, especially in today's fast-paced world.
Oh, absolutely. Like being able to get to the point quickly is a huge asset.
It shows respect for people's time,
Yeah, no one wants to listen to someone ramble on and on.
Exactly.
So concise is about conveying a lot of information.
Yes.
Clearly, but in as few words as possible.
It's about being succinct, getting straight to the heart of the matter.
And then there's lucid, which is kind of like concise, but with a focus on being easily understood.
Right. It's like those instructions that are so clear, you don't even have to ask any questions.
Yeah, they just make perfect sense.
Exactly. And that's the power of lucid communication.
Yeah, there's no room for misinterpretation. And then there's this word perspicuous.
Okay.
Which I just love. I don't know why I love that word.
It is a good one.
It is a good word.
It has a certain ring to it.
It does, yeah. And it basically means expressed in a way that leaves no doubt or confusion. It's like the professor whose lecture is so perspicuous that it clarifies every single question you had.
It's like the idea is illuminated.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I feel like perspicuous is almost like proactive clarity.
I see what you mean.
It anticipates potential misunderstandings and addresses them before they even arise.
That's a really insightful point.
So having this whole spectrum of words like concise, lucid,
and perspicuous.
And perspicuous allows you to really tailor your language to the situation and to the person you're talking to.
Absolutely. It gives you the tools to be both efficient and effective in your communication.
Okay, so now let's shift gears a bit.
All right.
And talk about describing people.
Okay.
And their personalities, because let's face it, we meet all sorts of people in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
And having a rich vocabulary to describe them just makes things so much more interesting and insightful.
Absolutely. It allows us to paint more vivid and nuanced portraits of the individuals we encounter.
So one word that came up was gregarious.
Oh, I love that word.
It's such a fun word.
It is, and it describes someone who loves the company of others, who's always up for socializing.
Yeah, like that person who just lights up a room.
Right. They bring energy and enthusiasm to every social gathering.
The example they gave was, he is a gregarious person who loves attending social events.
Perfect example.
Yeah, you could just picture that person, right?
Absolutely.
Now let's contrast that with someone who's meticulous. This describes someone who pays extreme attention to detail.
Right. They're all about precision and accuracy.
Yeah, like a surgeon or an editor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're the ones who catch the tiniest errors.
Exactly. And the example, her meticulous approach ensures no errors in her work, really highlights how crucial that trait can be in certain professions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's pragmatic.
The pragmatist.
There's someone who's very practical and down to earth.
Right. They're focused on what works rather than getting caught up in abstract ideas.
Yeah, they're all about finding the most efficient and effective solution.
Precisely. And the example they gave was he takes a pragmatic approach to problem solving.
It's about getting things done.
Exactly.
So for you listening, think about the different areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Where could a more pragmatic perspective help you achieve better results?
I love that you're constantly bringing it back to the listener and their personal growth.
Well, that's the whole point, right? It's not just about learning these words in a vacuum.
Right.
It's about applying them to make positive changes.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on to another interesting word. Astute.
Okay.
This describes someone who's sharp, intelligent, and has really good judgment.
They have a knack for understanding situations quickly and making wise decisions.
Yeah, it's like they just have this natural insight.
Right.
The example they gave was, she made an astute investment that paid off well.
It suggests that there was more to it than just luck.
Yeah.
There was a real understanding of the market and the ability to see potential where others might not.
Absolutely. And finally, in this section, we have magnanimous.
Magnanimous, such a powerful word.
It describes someone who's generous and forgiving.
Especially towards someone who's maybe less powerful or who has wronged them in some way.
Yeah, it speaks to a real nobility of character.
Right.
The example they gave was, despite their disagreement, he remained magnanimous and forgiving.
It's about rising above pettiness and showing compassion even in challenging circumstances.
It's a beautiful quality.
It really is.
So as you can see, having these words at your disposal just allows you to describe people in a much more nuanced and interesting way.
It's like having a whole new set of colors to paint with.
Exactly.
Instead of just saying someone is nice or smart, you can use words like gregarious or astute to really capture their essence.
Okay, so now let's dive into the world of professional and academic vocabulary.
Okay.
Because let's face it, these are the words that can really boost your credibility and make you sound like an expert.
Oh, absolutely. They give you that extra edge in more formal settings.
So let's start with the business world.
Okay.
One word that's thrown around a lot is synergy.
Synergy, yeah, it's all about the power of collaboration.
Right. It's that idea that when people or teams work together effectively, the results are greater than the sum of their individual contributions.
Exactly. It's like 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, the example they gave was the synergy between the marketing and sales teams increased revenue significantly.
It highlights how that collaboration can create a real multiplier effect.
And then there's proactive.
Yes, being proactive.
This is so important in the workplace.
It really is. It's about taking initiative, anticipating problems, and taking action before they even arise.
It's about being a step ahead.
Exactly. And in customer service, it's about going above and beyond to ensure a positive experience.
Absolutely. Now, on the flip side, there's ambiguous.
Okay.
This is a word you want to be careful with.
It can lead to a lot of confusion.
It basically means that something can be interpreted in more than one way.
Right. It's unclear and open to multiple meanings.
And the example they gave was the contract's ambiguous wording led to costly legal disputes.
Oh yeah, ambiguity in legal documents is a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. So it's important to be very precise and clear, especially in formal settings.
Absolutely.
Now, shifting gears to something more positive.
Right.
There's entrepreneurial.
The entrepreneurial spirit.
This describes someone who's willing to take risks and start new ventures.
Right. They're driven by innovation and the desire to build something from the ground up.
The example they gave was his entrepreneurial spirit led to the rapid growth of his tech startup.
It captures that combination of vision, passion, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty.
Absolutely. And speaking of success in the business world, there's lucrative.
Yeah, yes. Lucrative.
This describes something that produces a significant profit or wealth.
Right. It's all about financial gain.
The example they gave was investing in renewable energy can be a surprisingly lucrative venture in the long term.
It highlights the potential for financial rewards in emerging markets.
All right, so now let's move on to the academic world.
Okay.
Because there are some really interesting words here that can elevate your communication in this sphere.
For sure.
So one word that comes to mind is extrapolate.
Extrapolate.
This is all about taking existing data or trends and using them to make predictions or inferences about the future.
Right. It's a key skill in research and analysis.
Yeah, the example they gave was based on current research, we can extrapolate potential long-term effects.
It highlights how we can use what we know to make educated guesses about what might happen.
Exactly. And then there's paradigm.
Paradigm.
This is a big one. It refers to a dominant theory, framework, or way of thinking within a particular field.
Right. It's the accepted model or set of beliefs that shapes how people approach a subject.
The example they gave was the scientific paradigm shifted dramatically with the theory of relativity.
That's a great example because it shows how a groundbreaking discovery can completely change our understanding of the world.
And then there's cogent.
Cogent.
This describes an argument or reasoning that is clear, logical, and convincing.
Right. It's about presenting your ideas in a way that is both compelling and persuasive.
The example they gave was her cogent analysis of the data persuaded the panel of experts.
It highlights how a well-reasoned argument can really sway people's opinions.
Absolutely. Now, here's a word that comes with a bit of a caution. Esoteric.
Yes, esoteric.
This describes knowledge that is understood by only a small, specialized group of people.
Right. It's specialized knowledge that can be quite difficult for outsiders to grasp.
The example they gave was the nuances of quantum physics can seem quite esoteric to those outside the field.
It's a reminder that while specialized language is essential within certain disciplines, using it too broadly can alienate your audience.
Exactly. So it's all about knowing your audience and using language that is appropriate for the context.
Absolutely.
And finally, in this section, we have erudite. This describes someone who possesses or displays great knowledge and learning.
Right. They're well-read, well-informed, and just have a deep understanding of a wide range of subjects.
The example they gave was his erudite presentation covered centuries of philosophical thought.
It suggests a breadth and depth of knowledge that is truly impressive.
So these professional and academic words, they really give you the tools to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
In these specific contexts.
Absolutely. They allow you to engage with the material on a deeper level and really show that you know your stuff.
Okay, so now let's move on to the fascinating world of emotions and feelings.
Right.
Because sometimes simple words like happy or sad just don't cut it.
Right. They don't quite capture the complexity of our emotional experiences.
So our sources provided some really great vocabulary to help us articulate those nuances.
Okay.
So one word that stood out to me was exuberant.
Exuberant.
It describes someone who's just full of energy, excitement, and enthusiasm.
Right. They radiate joy and positivity.
Yeah, the example they gave was her exuberant greeting made everyone feel instantly welcome.
It's like their happiness is contagious.
Yeah.
It just spreads to everyone around them.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have despondent.
Despondent.
This describes someone who's lost all hope and is in a state of deep sadness or despair.
Right. It goes beyond just feeling down. It's a profound sense of hopelessness.
Yeah. The example they gave was he felt utterly despondent after receiving the bad news.
It suggests that they're really struggling to cope with a difficult situation.
And then there's nonchalant.
It's nonchalant. Okay.
This is someone who appears calm and unconcerned even in stressful situations.
Right. They have this air of indifference.
The example they gave was she remained nonchalant despite the obvious danger.
It's like they're completely unfazed by what's going on around them.
Which can be both intriguing and a little unsettling.
Yeah, you're left wondering what's really going on beneath the surface.
Exactly.
Are they truly unbothered, or are they just really good at hiding their feelings?
And then we have melancholy.
Melancholy.
This is a beautiful word.
It is.
It describes a pensive sadness, often thoughtful, and maybe a bit wistful.
Right. It's a more gentle, introspective kind of sadness.
The example they gave was the old photograph evoked a feeling of melancholy.
It's like a bittersweet longing for the past.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, for expressing extreme joy, we have ecstatic.
Ecstatic.
This is pure, unadulterated happiness.
Right. It's like being on top of the world.
Yeah. The example they gave was they were ecstatic after their team won the championship.
It's that feeling of overwhelming joy and excitement.
So having all of these words at your disposal just allows you to express your emotions and feelings with much more depth and accuracy.
Absolutely. It's like having a more refined vocabulary for your inner world.
Okay, so let's wrap things up with our final category. Advanced vocabulary for debates and discussions.
All right, let's get argumentative.
Now, these are the words that can help you really hold your own in any debate.
They give you the tools to articulate your points, clearly analyze opposing views, and just navigate those discussions more effectively.
So a key word in any debate is rebuttal.
Rebuttal.
This is a direct counter-argument to a claim or point.
Right. It's about addressing the opposing side's arguments head on.
The example they gave was her well-reasoned rebuttal effectively addressed the criticisms.
It shows that you're not just ignoring the other side's perspective.
Yeah.
You're actively engaging with it and presenting a counterargument.
And taking it a step further, there's refute.
Refute. Okay.
This means to prove a statement or theory wrong or false.
Right. It's about providing evidence or logic to dismantle the opposing argument.
The example they gave was the new evidence conclusively refuted the long-held belief.
It's a stronger claim than just disagreeing.
Yeah.
You're actually demonstrating that the other side's position is incorrect.
Now, for those really tricky situations, there's conundrums.
Conundrums, yes.
This refers to a difficult problem or dilemma with no easy or obvious solution.
Right. It's those situations where you're just like, how do I even approach this?
The example they gave was the ethical conundrum of artificial intelligence continues to be debated.
It's a great example because AI presents all sorts of complex challenges.
Yeah, with no easy answers.
Exactly.
And then there's fallacy.
Fallacy.
This is a mistaken belief or unsound argument based on flawed logic.
Right. It's about identifying those errors in reasoning that can lead to false conclusions.
The example they gave was his entire argument rested on a well-known logical fallacy.
It highlights the importance of critical thinking in any debate or discussion.
Yeah, being able to spot those fallacies can really help you avoid getting misled.
Absolutely.
And finally, we have juxtapose.
Juxtapose. Okay.
This means to place two or more things side by side for the purpose of comparison or contrast.
Right. It's a great way to highlight similarities or differences.
The example they gave was the author cleverly juxtaposed the characters' contrasting viewpoints.
It shows how this technique can be used to create tension or emphasize key distinctions.
So all of these words, they really equip you to not only participate more effectively in debates, but also to analyze the arguments presented by others with a more critical eye.
Absolutely. They give you the tools to be both a persuasive speaker and a discerning listener.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into advanced vocabulary, it's clear that expanding your linguistic toolkit can really make a difference.
Oh, for sure. It empowers you to communicate with greater sophistication and precision.
Absolutely. And for you, our listener, I encourage you to think about which of these words really resonated with you. Which ones do you think you could start using today?
Yeah.
In your everyday conversations, in your writing.
Absolutely.
And it might feel a little awkward at first, but the more you use them, the more natural they'll become.
Exactly. And soon they'll be a seamless part of your vocabulary.
And this brings us to a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
How do you think, even just incorporating a few of these more advanced words, could subtly shift the way others perceive you? Your intelligence, your confidence, your command of the English language?
It's a powerful question.
It is, and remember this deep dive. It's just the beginning. The journey of expanding your vocabulary. It's ongoing.
Absolutely. There's always more to learn and explore.
So what new linguistic adventures will you embark on next?
I can't wait to find out.
Me too.
Me too. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into daily English practice. A comprehensive guide.
Awesome.
We'll be breaking down its key insights and helping you create a personalized plan to boost your English skills.
A lot of people, I think, find that even opening a guide can feel like a chore sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we're here to make this fun.
Definitely.
And most importantly, useful for you.
Exactly. I think one of the things that stood out to me immediately in the guide was this emphasis on a holistic approach.
Right.
So many people get hung up on,
yeah.
Grammar rules and things like that. But this guide really encourages you to just weave English into your daily life.
Yeah.
In a way that feels natural and not so much like study.
It's interesting you say that because that's one of the first things that jumped out at me as well. It's like, rather than being this very strict kind of like you must do this type of guide, It brings in the element of fun, and it encourages people to make it a part of their lifestyle.
Yeah, and speaking of weaving it in, the guide suggests something that seems super simple, but I think could be a game changer. Have you ever tried switching your phone and computer settings to English?
I have. I actually have. And it's fascinating how effective it can be. It's all about what we call passive learning. So it's constantly exposing your brain to the language, even when you're not actively sitting down and studying.
Oh, I like that.
You think about it. You hear a song on the radio a few times, and suddenly you find yourself humming along without even realizing you learned the lyrics.
That's true. That's true.
It's the same with language.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. So it's like your brain is secretly absorbing all those patterns and nuances in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the guide takes this idea of subtle immersion even further. It suggests labeling everyday objects around your house with their English names. Now, I know it might sound a little bit silly,
right?
But it's just those little visual reminders. They can really cement those vocabulary words in your mind.
I'm picturing like a sticky note on my fridge that says, "Beware, snack monster lives here."
Yes.
What about you? Any funny label ideas come to mind?
Well, my coffee maker would definitely need a label that says lifeblood.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But all jokes aside, the guide's point is to make the language a tangible part of your surroundings.
It's about making those constant little connections between the words and the things they represent.
Exactly.
I can see how that would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But before we go slapping English labels on everything, the guide is really clear that we need to take a step back and set some solid goals.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because it's like setting out on a road trip without knowing where you're going.
Yeah.
So what are you hoping to achieve with your English skills? Is it for work, travel, to connect with family and friends? Or maybe just for the joy of learning?
Yeah. It's a great point. Knowing your why can make all the difference in terms of staying motivated.
Oh, for sure.
And on track, but sometimes even when we have a clear why, like I know why I want to do it, but it's hard to know where to start. And I think that's where the guide's tips on all the different types of practice come in. Right?
Absolutely. The guide breaks it down into several key areas, starting with engaging with English media.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Movies, TV shows, podcasts, audiobooks. I mean, there are so many options out there.
I know.
Do you have any favorites that you would recommend?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it really depends on your personal interest.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of documentaries, for example, you could check out some of the amazing nature documentaries on platforms like Netflix or BBC.
Ooh, good idea.
There's so much out there.
And I know a lot of people are into true crime podcasts these days. There's so many great ones to choose from.
Yeah.
Do you think it matters what kind of accent the speakers have?
That is a great question. I think being exposed to different accents is definitely beneficial. It helps to train your ear to understand different ways of speaking English. But ultimately, the most important thing is to choose something you genuinely enjoy listening to. Whether it's British crime drama or an American comedy podcast.
It shouldn't feel like homework.
Exactly.
And speaking of things that might feel like homework, the guide also talks about the importance of speaking practice. But for a lot of people, that can feel super intimidating. Any tips for overcoming that fear of speaking?
Well, the guide suggests a technique that might sound a little unconventional at first. Have you ever considered talking to yourself in English?
I know. It sounds a bit strange, but I think there's something to it.
Absolutely. It's a safe space to practice without that pressure of an audience. You can experiment with different vocabulary, work on your pronunciation, and just get comfortable with the rhythm of the language.
And you don't have to worry about making mistakes. Because your only listener is... Although if you start answering yourself back in a different accent, that might be a sign you need to get out more.
Exactly.
Maybe take a break from the English practice for a little bit.
But, even narrating your daily activities, like I'm making breakfast now, or I need to find my keys. Those little things can make a difference.
It's about getting those English words out of your head and into the real world in a way.
Precisely. And if you are ready to venture beyond talking to yourself, the guide also suggests finding a language partner.
That sounds a little bit less daunting than, giving a presentation in English. Where do you even find a language partner, and how does that actually work?
Well, there's a few different ways to go about it. The guide mentions online platforms like conversationexchange.com. and apps like Tandem or Hello Talk, where you can connect with people from all over the world.
So for example, if I'm learning English and I'm also fluent in Spanish, I could find someone who's learning Spanish and wants to practice English.
Exactly.
We could help each other out.
Yeah, it's a great way to get real-life conversation practice.
Yeah.
And learn from each other's experiences.
It's like a language learning buddy system. But what if you're not really into the whole online thing?
Right.
Are there offline options for finding language partners?
Definitely. The guide also suggests checking out local meetups or language exchange events.
Okay.
You could look for language cafes, conversation clubs, or even just search for English conversation groups on websites like meetup.com.
I love that idea. I think that's a chance to meet people face to face and practice your English skills in a relaxed and supportive environment. And you never know, you might even make some new friends along the way.
You never know. Exactly. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so I think we've covered some really good ground here in terms of, setting ourselves up for success.
For sure.
We've got the goals.
Yes.
We've got the idea of immersing ourselves in the language and kind of finding those opportunities to practice speaking. I'm really excited to dig into the next section, which is all about vocabulary building.
Too.
But before we do that,
Okay.
how about we take a quick break just to let all this information sink in?
Sounds good.
We'll be back soon to delve into the secrets of building a powerful English vocabulary.
I can't wait.
Welcome back. I am ready to tackle vocabulary now. It just feels like such a key part of feeling confident in a new language, you know?
Absolutely. It's like the building blocks, right?
Yeah.
And the guide really dives deep into this, offering both, classic approaches and some maybe a little bit more unexpected.
Okay, yeah.
We all know about flashcards. Do you use those?
I have tried them. I have to admit, I sometimes get a little bored just flipping through cards. I know they work for some people, but I'm always looking for ways to make it, more engaging.
Right.
What does the guide say about that?
Well, it acknowledges that flashcards and apps like Quizlet can be helpful.
Yeah.
Especially for learning those initial words. But it really emphasizes that true fluency goes beyond simply recognizing words in isolation.
So it's not enough to just memorize a list of words.
Right.
I guess that makes sense. Like, you could know a ton of words, but still not know how to actually use them
Exactly.
in a real conversation.
It's like having all the ingredients, but not knowing the recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
What I find really interesting is the guides focus on understanding words in context.
Right.
It's about seeing how words work together, how they're used in different situations,
Right.
and even how their meanings can shift depending on the surrounding words.
So it's about moving beyond the dictionary definition and seeing how words behave in the wild.
Precisely. And it suggests a few ways to do this. One is to create your own sentences with new words.
Okay.
Try to use them in a variety of ways. Another is to just pay attention to how words are used in the books or articles or podcasts that you're already enjoying.
That sounds a lot more interesting than just memorizing definitions. I like that.
Yeah.
The guide also mentions something called collocations.
Yes.
I've heard of those, but I'm not totally clear on what they are or why they're so important. Can you kind of break that down for us?
Of course. Collocations are basically words that tend to go together naturally.
Okay.
Like we say, make a decision,
Uh-huh.
not do a decision.
Right.
Or catch a cold, not grab a cold.
Okay. Yeah.
They're these little pairings that native speakers just instinctively know.
Yeah.
And using them correctly can make your English sound much more natural and fluent.
Oh, I see. It's like those unwritten rules of the language that you pick up through exposure and practice.
Exactly. And the guide stresses that becoming aware of collocations can be a real game changer for your vocabulary development.
Okay.
It's not just about learning individual words. It's about understanding how they connect and interact with each other.
So how can we train ourselves to notice and use collocations correctly?
It's all about paying attention. As you read and listen to English, start noticing those common word pairings. You'll find them everywhere.
Yeah.
And the more you encounter them,
Yeah.
the more natural they'll become in your own speaking and writing.
Got it. It's like training your brain to recognize those patterns and then incorporating them into your own language.
Exactly.
This makes me think about something we touched on earlier. Active listening. It seems like that could be a really helpful skill for picking up on collocations too, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Active listening is not just about understanding the words.
Mm-hmm.
It's about tuning into those subtle nuances
Right.
of how words are used together. It's about becoming a language detective.
Ooh, I like that analogy. So beyond just paying attention, what are some specific techniques that we can use to make our listening more active and effective?
Well, the guy offers some really great advice here. One key tip is to minimize distractions.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Put away your phone, turn off the TV, and really focus on what you're listening to.
Right. Create that space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed how much more you absorb
Mm-hmm.
when you eliminate those external distractions.
It's like creating a mental space where you can fully immerse yourself in the language.
Exactly. Another tip is to take notes while you listen.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy,
Right.
just jotting down keywords, phrases,
Yeah.
or even questions that come up. This can really help you process the information and remember it better.
It's almost like having a conversation with the material.
Yeah,
You're not just passively absorbing it, you're actively engaging with it.
precisely. And if you're listening to a podcast or audiobook,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to pause and rewind if you need to catch something.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of those formats is you can control the pace
Right.
and go back as many times as you need to.
Yeah. That's such a good point. I used to feel almost guilty rewinding, like I was somehow failing at listening.
Oh, yeah.
But it's really just about giving yourself the time and space to fully grasp what you're hearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, active listening isn't just about comprehension.
Right.
It's also about noticing those subtle aspects of language, like collocations.
Yeah, yeah.
The more you expose yourself to authentic English, the more you'll internalize those patterns and nuances.
Okay, so we've got active listening down, but what about reading?
Yes.
How can we make sure we're getting the most out of our reading practice?
That's another area where the guide offers some great insights.
Okay.
It encourages us to go beyond simply reading for pleasure,
Uh-huh.
which is definitely important too.
Yeah, of course.
But it suggests approaching reading as a way to actively expand your vocabulary
Okay.
and deepen your understanding of grammar and sentence structure.
So it's about reading with a purpose, not just to pass the time or get lost in a story.
Exactly. And the guide offers a few techniques to make your reading more active and purposeful.
Okay, like what?
One is to preview the text before you start reading.
Okay.
Look at the title,
Yeah.
headings, subheadings, anything that gives you clues about the topic and the main ideas.
So it's like creating a mental map of where the text is going to take you.
Right. Then as you read, ask yourself questions about the text.
Okay.
What's the author's main point?
Mm-hmm.
What evidence do they use to support their arguments?
Yeah.
How does this information connect to what I already know?
It's like having an internal dialogue with the author, like challenging their ideas.
Yes.
And making connections to your own knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, after you finish reading, take a few minutes to summarize what you've learned.
Okay.
You could do this mentally.
Yeah.
Or even better, write down a brief summary in your own words.
Uh-huh.
This helps you solidify your understanding
Right.
and identify any areas where you might need to go back and reread.
It's about making those ideas stick. And speaking of making things stick, the guide also emphasizes the importance of keeping a vocabulary journal. Have you ever tried that?
I have, and I think it can be a really helpful tool.
Yeah.
It's not just about writing down definitions. It's about creating your own personal dictionary
Okay.
where you can record new words,
Yeah.
example sentences, collocations, even little sketches or diagrams
Oh, wow.
that help you remember the meanings.
It's like a visual representation of your expanding vocabulary.
Exactly.
But let's be honest, even with all the best techniques, building vocabulary takes time and effort. What does the guide say about staying motivated when those words just don't seem to be sticking?
Well, the guide offers a few strategies for those moments when you feel like giving up.
Okay.
One is to set realistic goals.
Yeah.
Don't try to learn 100 new words a day.
Right.
Start small, maybe 5 or 10 words, and gradually increase the number as you feel more comfortable.
It's about building that vocabulary muscle gradually, rather than trying to do a mental marathon right out of the gate.
Exactly. And another key tip is to review those words regularly.
Okay.
Repetition is key when it comes to learning anything new.
Yeah.
And vocabulary is no exception. So make sure you're revisiting those words, using them in different contexts, and testing yourself to see how well you remember them.
It's about making those words a part of your active vocabulary, not just something you passively recognize.
Exactly.
But what if we're not sure what words to focus on? Should we just start at the beginning of the dictionary and work our way through?
That might not be the most efficient approach. The guide encourages us to be strategic about our vocabulary choices.
Okay.
Think about your goals. What do you want to be able to talk about in English? What topics are you most interested in?
Right.
Focus on words that are relevant to your interests and goals.
That makes a lot of sense. So if I'm, passionate about cooking,
Yeah.
I should prioritize learning words related to food, recipes, ingredients, cooking techniques.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to personalize your learning journey.
Yeah.
Choose resources that you find interesting and engaging, whether it's a cookbook, a food blog, or even a YouTube channel dedicated to your favorite cuisine.
It's all about making learning fun and relevant to your life. Okay, so we've got some solid strategies for building vocabulary, but let's be real, sometimes even the most motivated language learners kind of hit a wall.
Yeah.
What does the guide say about pushing through those moments of frustration and staying on track?
The guide emphasizes the importance of finding your why. That deep-seated reason that's driving you to learn English.
Right.
When you connect with your why, it can fuel your motivation.
Yeah.
And help you push through those challenging times.
It's like remembering the bigger picture and why this journey is important to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't forget to celebrate those milestones along the way.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Did you finally master that tricky grammar rule? Were you able to have a conversation with a native speaker without feeling lost? Give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah. Celebrate those wins.
Those small victories can make a big difference in keeping you motivated.
It's about acknowledging those wins and recognizing how far you've come.
Absolutely.
But what if you're not seeing the progress that you hope for? How do you stay positive when you feel like you're stuck?
The guide reminds us that language learning is a journey, not a race.
I like that.
There will be bumps along the road, plateaus, where you feel like you're not moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
The key is to be patient with yourself. Embrace those challenges as part of the process. And keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
It's about having a growth mindset and seeing those setbacks as opportunities to learn and improve.
Exactly. And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
There are countless others out there who are learning English,
Yeah.
facing similar challenges, and celebrating similar victories. Don't be afraid to connect with other learners, share your experiences,
Yeah.
and support each other along the way.
That's such a great point. It's about building a community of language learners
Yes.
who can encourage and inspire each other.
Precisely. And speaking of community, the guide also delves into the world of technology and how it can support our language learning journey. Ready to explore some of the digital tools and resources that are out there?
Absolutely. I'm always curious about new apps and platforms that can make learning more fun and accessible.
Well, you're in luck.
Yeah.
The guide highlights a wide range of tech tools.
Okay.
From language learning apps to online courses and language exchange platforms.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's dive into the digital side of language learning. All right, so we're back and ready to explore the world of tech for language learning. It feels like there's a new app or platform popping up every day. What are some of the standouts that the guide mentions?
Well, it breaks them down into a few main categories, starting with language learning apps. You've probably heard of some of the big names like Duolingo, Babbel, and Rosetta Stone. Have you tried any of those?
I've dabbled in Duolingo. I like the gamified approach,
Yeah.
but sometimes it feels a bit superficial, like it's not really getting me to where I want to be.
That's a good point. I mean, Duolingo's great for beginners, especially for building basic vocabulary and grammar.
Yeah.
It's fun and engaging, but it might not be enough to get you to, true fluency.
So if someone wants to go a little deeper, what would you recommend?
It really depends on their learning style and goals.
Okay.
Babbel, for example, is known for its focus on practical conversational skills. It covers a wide range of real-life topics and situations, so it's great for learners who want to be able to use English in everyday settings.
So if someone's planning a trip abroad, Babbel could help them with phrases for ordering food, asking for directions, navigating those everyday travel scenarios.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's Rosetta Stone, which takes a more immersive approach. It teaches English through pictures, audio, and text, without relying on translations.
Okay. It's known for being effective for building pronunciation and speaking skills.
It's almost like learning a language the way children do,
Yeah.
through exposure and immersion, rather than through direct translation. It's fascinating how these different apps use different methodologies to achieve similar goals.
It is. It is. And that's what makes exploring these tools so interesting. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Right.
The guide really stresses that the key is to find an app that aligns with your individual learning style and the specific skills you want to develop.
It's about choosing the right tool for the job. But apps are just one piece of the tech puzzle, right?
Yeah.
What about online courses? Are we talking about those massive open online courses like the ones on Coursera or Udemy?
Those are definitely part of the landscape. The guide highlights platforms like those which offer a huge variety of courses, from grammar and vocabulary to business English and exam preparation.
Wow.
They can be a great way to deepen your knowledge in a specific area.
Okay.
Or to work towards a particular certification. So if someone wants to improve their English for a specific career field, like healthcare or technology, they could find a specialized course that caters to their needs.
Exactly. And one of the great things about online courses is the flexibility.
Yeah.
You can learn at your own pace, on your own schedule, from anywhere in the world.
It's like having a personalized English tutor available 24/7.
It is.
But even with the best apps and courses, I think there's something to be said for the human element of language learning. What does the guide say about that?
You're so right. And it actually dedicates a whole section to the importance of, finding your tribe, connecting with other English learners, and creating that sense of community.
I love that idea. It's like forming a support system where you can share resources, practice together, and celebrate each other's wins. Where do you suggest people find their language learning tribe?
Well, the guide mentions a few options, starting with online communities. Reddit, for example, has tons of subreddits dedicated to language learning, like English learning or language exchange.
Cool.
These online forums can be great places to ask questions, get advice, and connect with people from all over the world.
It's amazing how technology can bring people together who share a common passion for language learning.
It really is. It really is.
And if you prefer face-to-face interaction, are there offline options too?
Definitely. The guide also suggests checking out those local meetups or language exchange events. You could look for language cafes, conversation clubs, or even just search for English conversation groups on websites like meetup.com.
I can imagine those meetups being a lot of fun. It's a chance to practice your English skills in a relaxed and supportive environment, and who knows, you might even make some new friends along the way.
Exactly. It's about creating that social aspect to your language learning journey and making it more enjoyable and engaging.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the core principles of daily English practice, delved into specific techniques for improving our skills, and even ventured into the world of technology and community building. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on something that I think a lot of listeners struggle with, and that's motivation. How do we keep the momentum going and make language learning a sustainable part of our lives?
That's such a great question, and it's something that the guide addresses directly. One of the key takeaways is that consistency is key. It's much more effective to practice for a short time each day than to try to cram everything into one long study session once a week.
So it's about finding those little pockets of time in our day where we can weave in some English practice, whether it's listening to a podcast during our commute or reading an article before bed.
Exactly. And it's also about setting realistic goals and celebrating those small wins along the way. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight. Language learning is a journey, and it takes time, effort, and patience.
It's about focusing on progress, not perfection.
Precisely. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There are countless others out there who are learning English, facing similar challenges, and celebrating similar victories. Don't be afraid to connect with other learners, share your experiences, and support each other along the way.
Absolutely. We're all in this together. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like we've really uncovered some amazing strategies and insights from daily English practice, a comprehensive guide that our listeners can start using right away.
I agree. I think there's something in here for everyone.
Definitely. And to all our listeners out there, keep practicing, stay curious, and most importantly, have fun on your language learning adventure. We'll see you next time for another deep dive. All right, so you guys have given us like a ton of material this time.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
And it's all about, those things that get in the way when you're trying to actually achieve something big. So what we want to do in this deep dive is to go beyond just, lifting out those roadblocks.
Right.
We want to really dig into why these things, based on what you guys have sent in, trip us up, and more importantly, how to actually, get past them.
Absolutely. I think, and like you said, you've given us so much material, so diverse.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that it really emphasizes is that, success is such a personal thing.
Right.
It could be, for some people, financial security. For other people, it's a deeper sense of purpose. For other people, it's really strong connections or leaving, some kind of lasting impact.
Yeah.
But what I think is fascinating is that even though those definitions are all over the place, the reasons that we stumble, those underlying reasons often share kind of these commonalities.
Right.
So it's almost like a personalized roadmap of what are those things that get in our way.
Yeah, okay. So, let's just dive into it.
Okay.
Something I think resonates with pretty much everyone, fear of failure.
Yeah.
Your research, really emphasized this as, just like a base level obstacle for so many people.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I remember from one of the studies you guys sent me was, almost describing it as this deeply ingrained protective mechanism. We're naturally inclined to, avoid potential harm. And in many ways, failing at something, it activates that same kind of cautious response.
Right. Makes sense.
But I think one of the things that I really was just stark was the statistic that over half of people dream of starting a business, but only a small fraction actually take that step.
Yeah. It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Over 50% are held back by, what are the big things? What are they afraid of?
I think the big things are, and they were pretty consistent across the board, losing their financial investment, the money they put in,
right.
Facing, kind of public scrutiny, judgment.
Like ridicule. Yeah.
Ridicule, exactly.
Yeah.
Or just even damaging their reputation.
Yeah, you put yourself out there and
Totally.
it doesn't work.
And it doesn't work. But I think the really kind of crucial point that a lot of the articles brought up was, that this fear itself can create this barrier.
Right.
That, by avoiding that risk of failure, people are kind of, sometimes inadvertently preventing the possibility of success.
Yeah. So it's almost like we're preemptively defeating ourselves.
Exactly.
And I know, there was some interesting stuff about changing our perspective on failure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we look at that differently?
Well, I think, rather than seeing it as this kind of, definitive endpoint,
Yeah.
The articles really encouraged you to see it as this indispensable part of the process.
Yeah.
That learning. And the example that kept coming up was Thomas Edison and his light bulb.
Yeah.
That he had all of these, attempts that didn't work.
Right. Thousands.
But they weren't useless. It was, each one was informing, the next step.
So each one was data.
Yeah.
It was just information gathering.
Information gathering, exactly. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But I think, how do you actually change that?
Yeah. How do you make that shift?
Especially when it feels, when it feels scary. When it feels like there's a lot at stake.
Totally.
And I think a lot of the articles had a really practical suggestion, which is start small.
Okay.
Start with more manageable risks.
Baby steps, kind of.
Baby steps, exactly. Yeah. And it's almost like you're building a tolerance.
Yeah.
You're getting used to that feeling of potential setback.
Yeah.
And you're learning from it in a way that's less threatening.
Right.
But I think the really important thing is, and this was emphasized a lot, is, to really consciously reflect. After every attempt, regardless of the outcome, sit down and really think about, what can I take from this? How can I change what I'm doing moving forward?
I like that. It's taking the data and doing something with it.
Totally.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so next up, something that I've definitely struggled with. Lack of clear goals.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you have an idea of what you want, but you haven't really nailed down the specifics.
Absolutely. And I think your sources, they really hit on this as just this major thing that gets in the way.
Yeah.
Because, these really general aspirations, I want to be more successful, or, I want to be happy, or whatever, it just doesn't give you that direction to, really fuel consistent action. How are you actually going to measure that?
Yeah, it's almost like, I was reading one of the things that you pulled out. It was about fitness.
Yes.
And it was saying, I want to get in shape is so different than saying, I want to be able to run a 5K in under 30 minutes by the end of the year.
Exactly.
One is a wish and the other one is almost instructions.
Yeah, totally.
So how do you get from that vague desire to something more concrete?
Well, everything pointed to this SMART framework,
Okay.
which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay. That's a lot, but
But I think what it really does is it forces you to define those aspirations in a way that you can act on them and you can track them.
okay.
So walk us through it. Like, let's say, I want to improve my finances.
Right.
How do we make that smart?
Okay, so instead of, I want to improve my finances, you might say, I will increase my savings by $5,000 within the next 12 months
Okay.
by allocating $400 per month from my current income. So there's, action.
And getting specific.
You're getting specific and exploring one new side income opportunity that I will dedicate at least 5 hours per week to. So, in that case, it's specific, right? Increase savings by a particular amount. It's measurable. $5,000. Hopefully it's achievable, depending on your financial situations.
Yeah.
It's relevant, right? To, I want to improve my finances. And then it's time bound.
Within the year.
Within 12 months. And I think, and this was emphasized a lot in the material, is breaking it down and, like weekly tasks, monthly tasks. It really makes a difference in terms of, staying motivated and not feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. That makes sense. When you see it broken down that way, it seems a lot more attainable.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's move on to another thing that pretty much everyone I know struggles with. Procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
Like that tendency to put off what's really important for something, that's not.
Yeah.
And, in a nutshell, you guys defined it as that act of delaying important tasks.
Right.
Often in favor of something that's more immediately gratifying or, just less demanding.
Right. Like gives you that instant gratification, but it's not moving you towards, where you want to be long term.
And I think there was a stat like 20% of adults
Yeah. Something like that.
identify as chronic procrastinators.
Which is a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting. Like the research said it's not laziness. It's what was the term? Emotional regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. A lot of the sources talked about that. And I thought that's really insightful because I think we think, oh, I'm just being lazy.
Right.
But it's actually more about almost like a way of avoiding these negative feelings that come up when you think about the task.
Okay, so give us an example. What kind of negative feelings are we talking about?
Well, you might think about a task and it feels overwhelming
Sure.
or, really boring.
Yeah.
Or, it's super stressful.
Or there's a chance you might fail at it.
Or you might fail at it, exactly. And so by putting it off, you're getting this temporary relief from that discomfort.
But then what happens?
Well, then, as a lot of your sources pointed out, that avoidance can really backfire.
Yeah.
Because, as the deadline gets closer and closer, the stress, the guilt, the anxiety, it all kind of piles up.
Right. Like that student who puts off studying all semester.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And then it's the night before and they're cramming.
Totally. And they haven't really, absorbed the material.
So how do you stop that? How do you break that cycle?
Well, there were a lot of great strategies in your sources.
Yeah.
And one of the key recommendations that came up again and again was to, kind of figure out what your personal procrastination triggers are. What are those things that make you want to delay?
So almost know thyself.
Yeah, exactly. And once you kind of figure out what those patterns are, then you can start to okay, how do I deal with this?
Okay.
Another technique, a lot of them mention the 2-minute rule, which I love.
I like that.
It's so simple. If you can do it in under 2 minutes, just do it.
Just do it.
Get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really helps you kind of, build that momentum.
Yeah. Get those little things out of the way.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then what about the bigger things? I can see how that works for the small stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
for bigger tasks, breaking them down into smaller steps, really small steps.
Yeah.
And a lot of times just starting with the easiest thing.
Okay.
That can often be enough to kind of get you over that initial hurdle.
Yeah. Just got to start somewhere. Okay. So let's talk about something that, is sometimes mistaken for diligence.
Yeah.
Seeking perfection.
Perfectionism.
The double-edged sword.
Yeah, it really is. It gets praised a lot as a virtue.
Right.
But as your sources were really pointing out, it can really get in your way.
Yeah.
It's great to have high standards, but if you are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect outcome, you're never going to do anything.
I know so many people like that, and
Yeah.
honestly, I've been guilty of it myself. It's you get in that analysis paralysis.
Totally.
You're waiting for all the stars to align, and it never happens.
And the cost of that, according to the material that you sent me,
Yeah.
is that you miss opportunities. Because especially, in the world that we're living in today where things are changing so quickly, speed and iteration are way more valuable than trying to, reach this ideal that doesn't even exist.
So how do we break free of this need for everything to be perfect?
I think one of the key insights from all of the material is to embrace the idea of good enough, especially for the first iteration.
Okay.
Have high standards, but also understand that feedback and actually putting it out in the world, is going to give you the most valuable information.
Yeah.
And there was this quote from Reid Hoffman. I don't know if you know him. He's the co-founder of LinkedIn. And he famously said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late.
I love that.
It's so true. Getting something out there and seeing how people respond to it is so much better than, working on it in secret for years and trying to make it this, this perfect thing.
Yeah, and I think that ties into what we were talking about earlier, like taking failure as data.
Totally. Okay.
So you put it out there, maybe it's not perfect. You get that feedback, you learn from it.
Absolutely.
You make it better. Okay, let's move on to something else that, I think underpins a lot of successful things. Self-discipline.
Yeah.
And, a lot of your sources were saying, like, it's more important than just motivation.
Totally. I think motivation is great. It can get you started.
Yeah, it's that initial spark.
It's the spark. But as all the sources were saying, it's not a sustainable fuel source.
It's fickle. It comes and goes.
It really does. And I think, real success, whatever that means for you, it's so much more about consistent effort, even when you don't feel like it. I think a lot of us, we do things when we feel like it.
Yeah, you're relying on that motivation.
But the material is really making a distinction between dreamers and achievers.
Right.
And the achievers are the ones who just show up consistently.
Like day in and day out.
Rain or shine.
Yeah.
And I think, you guys sent me some really great examples of this. Serena Williams, her training regimen, she does it all year round.
Wow. Even in the off season.
Even in the off season.
Yeah.
And then you had Stephen King. He writes a certain number of words every day,
right,
regardless of whether he feels inspired or not.
Like his job is to write.
That's his job. Exactly.
Big hit.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you cultivate that? Like if it doesn't come naturally to you, how do you become more self-disciplined?
Well, all the advice that you sent was, start small, like really small.
Yeah.
Choose one or two kind of key habits that you want to build.
Okay.
And really focus on those. It could be as simple as, spending 15 minutes every day on a particular task, or a really short exercise routine. And a lot of your articles mentioned, habit trackers.
Yeah.
Which are, they give you that visual reinforcement.
It's like checking things off.
Yeah, it's like checking things off. And it does give you that sense of accomplishment.
Like you're building momentum.
You're building momentum. And over time, you start small, you're consistent, and it really strengthens your capacity for self-discipline.
So you're not so reliant on that fleeting motivation.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about something that's so important, I think, in anything you want to do, which is not underestimating the power of learning.
Oh, yeah. Continuous learning.
It's induced learning, yeah.
And especially in, the world today, it's changing so rapidly.
Constantly.
That if you, refuse to, learn and adapt, it's going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
If you think you already know everything you need to know, you're going to be obsolete.
You're going to be like left behind.
Totally left behind. And there was a great example you guys sent me about a marketing professional who was using like all these old school techniques.
Like while the internet's happening.
While the internet's happening. Social media, like, come on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, trying to use, tools from like the rotary phone era.
All right. To fix a smartphone.
Totally. To fix a smartphone. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
But I think, and this was emphasized, a lot, is it's not just about professional development.
Yeah, this is for anybody.
This is for anybody who's, trying to, improve themselves, achieve any goal, really.
Yeah.
And the example you guys had about Warren Buffett.
Oh, yeah.
Like spending most of his day reading.
Yeah.
It shows that commitment to learning, to acquiring knowledge is something that even people at the highest level.
Yeah. They don't just stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what do we do? What's the proactive thing? How do we make this a habit?
Well, I think, one of the things that your sources really emphasized was adopting a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Like believing that you can actually, improve, you can learn new things, and your intelligence can be developed.
Right.
Actively looking for new information, and there's so many sources now, books, podcasts,
Articles, online courses,
Yeah.
mentorship, talking to other people.
talking to other people. Yeah.
People who disagree with you.
Yeah, exactly. Like getting different perspectives,
Yeah.
and just making time for it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just, a little bit every day, every week, it's just about, staying curious and knowing that pursuit of knowledge is ongoing.
Yeah. It doesn't end.
Doesn't end.
Okay. Curiosity. That's the key. Okay. Let's talk about your environment.
Okay.
Surrounding yourself with the wrong people.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one.
Like how big of a deal is this?
It's massive.
Yeah.
I think all of your sources, they emphasized how much the people you're around, they influence your thoughts, your beliefs, and ultimately your actions.
Yeah.
And, being around people who are negative or who lack ambition or, who discourage you, like it can create this real drag on your progress. Think about friends who, just dismiss your ideas.
Right.
Or a partner who, just is resistant to change.
Yeah.
Or colleagues who, they just gossip all the time.
It's like you're trying to run a race and you've got like people just hanging on to you.
Totally.
Trying to pull you back.
Yeah. It's like trying to, climb a hill and people are pulling you down.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the quotes that came up a lot was Jim Rohn. He said, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with."
Oh, I've heard that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. And it really, sums up this idea.
Yeah. And
a lot of your material was also referencing, there's actual studies that show like how behavior, how attitudes, they spread through social networks.
So it's almost like we catch these things
Totally.
from the people we're around.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the takeaway here?
Well, I think it's about, it's almost like you need to consciously choose your environment.
Curate it.
Curate it, exactly. Be really intentional about who you're spending time with.
Yeah.
And, look for those people who inspire you, who challenge you in a good way.
Yeah.
Who offer support, who share your values, your ambitions.
Yeah.
And it might mean actively seeking out mentors.
Yeah.
Joining groups or communities that are aligned with your goals or just, spending more time with the positive influences that you already have.
Right.
And it's also okay, to limit your exposure to those relationships that drain you.
Yeah.
That, that aren't necessarily bad people.
Yeah.
But, you need to protect your energy. You need to protect your time.
So it's almost like creating like a healthy ecosystem for yourself.
Totally.
Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. Let's talk about another kind of drain. Overcommitting.
Oh, yeah.
Saying yes to everything.
Yes. I am so guilty of this.
Oh, me too. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think especially if you're the kind of person who, is driven, you see opportunities, you're like, yes, I want to do that.
You want to help.
You want to help, exactly.
Yeah.
But as all your sources pointed out, the cost of that is that you're diluting your focus, and your impact.
Yeah.
Think about, that freelancer who takes on every single project.
Regardless of how much it pays or if it's even a good fit.
Yeah, and then they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they can't do their best work.
Yeah.
Or, the entrepreneur who, has like 10 different things going on at once.
And nothing really, gets the attention it deserves. It's like spreading yourself too thin.
Spreading yourself too thin, totally.
And the result is a lot of times you feel busy, but you're not really productive.
Exactly. You're busy but not productive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, real success, it requires that focus.
Yeah.
It requires that you're making deliberate decisions about where to put your energy.
Yeah. So you're saying it's almost more important to say no sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just saying no to bad opportunities. It's even saying no to good opportunities if they don't align with your priorities.
So even if it's something that, you'd enjoy doing.
Totally.
You have to think about, like, what's the bigger picture here?
What's the bigger picture? And there was a great example, about Steve Jobs and how he simplified Apple's product line.
Oh, yeah. That was drastic.
Yeah, it was drastic.
Yeah.
But he basically, it cut out all these distractions, so that they could really focus on making, a few things amazing.
So it's like focusing by subtraction.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. So, Yeah, how do we get better at saying no?
Yeah, I think that's something we could all use some help with.
Totally. Well, the material that you sent, it suggested that we, sit down and really clarify our values, our top priorities.
Like what's most important to us.
Yeah. And then when you have that clear understanding,
Yeah.
It's easier to look at the requests that are coming in.
And decide like, okay, does this fit in?
Does this fit?
Does this fit in with my values and my goals?
And be able to say no to those things that don't,
Yeah.
even if it's hard.
Yeah.
Because you're protecting your time, you're protecting your energy.
Which ultimately makes you more effective.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about something that's so basic, but it's easy to overlook.
Okay.
Ignoring your health.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the pursuit of everything else, we sometimes let this one slip.
Absolutely. And I think, all of your sources really emphasize this. Like,
Right.
it's short-sighted. If you're sacrificing your sleep, good nutrition, exercise, just to be more productive in the short term, it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
But a lot of your research was pointing to like how it affects our mental capacity too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There were several articles that talked about how, if you're stressed, you're sleep deprived, you're not going to be thinking as clearly.
Yeah, and you're less creative.
Less creative, you're not making good decisions.
It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty tank.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think the really key takeaway, that came up again and again was there's this connection between, your physical and mental